What is the smallest change you could make right now to create the largest result in your life or your business? This is the question I am always asking myself. It's the thing that drives me in my life and my business. And it's what I want to bring to all of you. I think it's the most compelling question we can ask ourselves because we want the biggest result with the smallest effort. We want to use most of our bandwidth for all the other things in our life and our business. So, when I started my business many years ago, I kept hearing this phrase small change, huge result. Small changes, huge results. And it's driven me the whole time in my business. And when I reflect on some of the biggest moments I've experienced, and then the biggest moments I've seen my clients experience, both financially, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, in their results and in my results, it always comes down to a small change. Is there other work involved? Yeah, for sure there is. And in the end, it always comes down to some micro adjustment. We have found that when we go, everything starts to click into place. Like all the Tetris pieces go and land. This is what I'm most curious about. The least amount of input to create the greatest amount of output. And I remember reading one time Power versus Force by David Hawkins, and he talks about a mathematical equation, or not an equation, a theorem, an idea. I think it's in nonlinear dynamics, if I remember correctly, which essentially just says this: when you have an equation that has many different components, many different variables to create an outcome, when you change even one of those components or variables just a little bit, the outcome changes radically. And it started to line up for me with this idea: small changes, huge results. If we want a massive transformation or improvement in our life or our business or results, we don't necessarily have to rebuild everything. We want to find the smallest things we can adjust, first of all, in our own consciousness, then maybe outside of ourselves to create these results. So today, I really just wanted to share this concept and share a bunch of stories with you. Because I think when we hear a story, it speaks directly to our subconscious. We learn in a different way through stories. It allows our imagination to see us in a similar position. So I thought of a few stories from my own life and business, a few stories I've seen my clients go through and experience, where one thing shifted, and sometimes just a very small degree, and it created a massive result for them in their life or their business. So it's story time. It's the holiday season. We're recording this in mid-December 2024, right before the holidays in the US. And what a nice time to cozy up, tuck in, enjoy yourself, and we'll do some stories. So here's the first one. So this story happened many years ago. I was in a really tough spot in life and business. I was feeling so frustrated about where I was at, and I knew I was the one holding myself back. So I decided to have a call with a coach that I knew I wanted to work with. I knew before I even got on the call, this was the person to work with. I felt sick to my stomach on the call because I was so afraid. I said yes on the call. I put down half of the money I had, which was under $500. That's what I had at the time. And I put down half of that. Signed a contract on the call. I literally thought I was going to throw up. I was so scared, but I knew I had to do it. And the cost of the program was in the tens of thousands of dollars range. And the coach congratulated me on making a commitment and also challenged me to come up with a much more sizable deposit, many thousands of dollars that evening. It was about 7 p.m. The amount they asked me to come up with that night was almost as much as I'd ever made in a month. So I accepted the challenge. Like I was all in. What was I going to do? I'd made a non refundable deposit, signed a contract. So I got off the call and I did one very simple thing. I just talked to God, and I did not have a very close relationship with God at this point. And I just said, look, like I'm doing this one way or the other. And all I can do right now is trust and have faith that you're going to show me the way. So please show me, and I will do whatever you show me. And the promise I made to myself was I'm going to hold my faith, meaning even if it's time for me to go to bed that night and I haven't brought in the money, I'm going to act and feel as if I have. I'm going to still believe it's happening. So I made some calls, I sent some texts, did what I sought to do that night with no results. By the next day at 2 p.m., I had brought in into my accounts more than the coach had challenged me to bring in and more than I had ever made in a single month. So in like 18 hours, 17 hours, I brought in more than I had ever made in a month and it was easy. And within 5 days, I had doubled, almost doubled that. And I had exceeded a monthly goal that I had held for 2 years that I had absolutely no idea how to hit. And I did it in 5 days and it was easy. And the moral of the story, right? The lesson here, the small change that led to a huge result was I held my faith. I did not let the appearance of things or my results change my belief. Small change, huge result. At another time in the past, we wanted to move into this amazing house. And the house was exponentially more than I had ever paid for rent. And in the moment, I did not have that in the bank. I had no idea how I would come up with it. And in the past, what I would have done is either just go, it's impossible, or I would have just got really intellectual. But how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? But neither one of those had ever worked in the past. So what I did is I hung a picture of that house, like the flyer you get from an open house. I hung that on our fridge and I just decided this is our house. That's it. I won't tolerate any thinking that it's not. I remember talking to my then wife saying the same thing, like, let's just hold this as if it's guaranteed we're moving in. And it was probably 4 or 5 days, something like that. I didn't stress it or push it. I just went, this is our house. Every time I thought of it, I saw us in there. And within 4 or 5 days, I had someone quote unquote out of the blue say, I want to work with you. I have the money. Here it is. It was the exact amount we needed to move into that house. Exact. So again, this was an adjustment in certainly in faith, but it was in focus. I just chose to lead with the desire and go, what happens if I just focus on that desire and keep excited about it? I don't even look at the world of appearances of whether or not it looks realistic that that's going to happen. So small change in my mind, a small change. I didn't do some massive thing. Small change, huge result. I thought of this other moment. It was a moment I had where I admittedly was feeling very frustrated, angry, sad, scared. Money was not flowing the way I wanted or quite frankly needed it to be in that moment. And I remember I was sitting on my couch and I had done a lot. Like I had taken a lot of action. I wasn't just sitting there in despair going, oh, well, it didn't manifest. Like I had taken a lot of action for a long time. Much, much more than it had ever taken me to manifest money before. And I remember sitting there and I was like in tears on the couch. And I wasn't talking to God in this way. I was talking about God, but I was really talking to me and my subconscious. And I remember just going, it's not my job to figure this out. It's my job to receive it. It's God's job to bring it to me. It's God's job to show me the way. It's God's job to present the opportunity. It's my job to be receptive. And I was angry. I was like almost yelling. I was in tears. And it was a meaningful moment. I was like taking a stand in my consciousness, like, I don't have to figure this out. My intellect is not the answer here. I've tried and tried and tried from that place, and it has not worked. So it was like a declaration. I was taking a stand against an old belief. The next morning, I woke up and there was a huge check in the mail for me, completely unexpected. You hear stories of people receiving checks out of the blue. I had never had that. I had that. I was absolutely astounded because this was in one of my darkest moments. I truly had no idea what else to do. But what I did was, again, shift my consciousness. And it didn't take long and it wasn't a lot of effort. It was a decision. That's not my job. My job is being receptive and doing whatever I see in front of me. My job is to not pave the way or go figure it out. So, again, small change, huge result. Here's a couple stories from my clients. And again, I'll obviously keep them anonymous, but here's a few that come to mind. I could write an entire book with all this stuff for real. Maybe I will someday. Uh, it is normal in my client family for people to see massive results with very little changing outside of themselves. But when they find what has to change in their consciousness, the results change dramatically. So I had a new client come to me who had had a lot of success in business previously, did not currently have an income, had money set aside, but was feeling terrified that like money was never going to come in again. What had they done? They'd made huge mistakes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think after our second call, we didn't go adjust anything in their business. We didn't adjust anything in what they're doing. What we did was shift their consciousness enough to recognize, wait a minute, if I step out of the fear, there have to be opportunities here. And in fact, there was something this person really wanted to do, is just a little hesitant to offer it. They didn't go call a million people. What they did was make one Facebook post, maybe two, but I think just one. Essentially just raising their hand on the online space and going, hey, I'm available. No hard sell, no hard call to action. So I'm available for this thing. Within a week or 2 weeks from that, let's say 2 weeks, so I'm not overestimating what happened. Within 2 weeks, this person had booked almost $200,000 of business. $200,000, just under that, if I remembered correctly. All that really changed was their awareness. They decided the opportunity must be there, and they decided they were just going to put themselves out there a little bit. Again, that's a very small change. That was an instantaneous decision. And I don't know how long it took them to write the post, but maybe a half an hour. I don't think it was much longer than that. It wasn't a huge post. Small change, huge results, life-changing results. I had another client years ago who came to me not for this reason, but this happened to be going on. They came to me for business reasons, but they had these chronic physical symptoms, these sort of like mystery symptoms that they knew what had caused it, but none of the treatment was tackling it. None of the treatment was giving them the relief that they were looking for. So we went in and we just looked at the belief that was underpinning that. And I just suggested, like, what if every time this idea comes up, or what if every time you start feeling these symptoms, you make this particular internal shift? And they were willing to do that. Those symptoms completely disappeared. Now they would come back every, like, much, much, much more rarely. And when they would come back, it would be like a tiny blip and they would just adjust the thought, gone. So chronic mystery symptoms, chronic, gone like that from shifting one idea, one belief. Small changes, huge results. I had another client who needed to manifest almost $60,000 quickly. They had a decision to make first that was going to really be like, do they need that money? They wanted to make the decision, but they wanted to see the money first. They were really scared to make the decision because what if the money didn't show up? So we did a little bit of work and they made this internal decision, which just said, the money has to be here for me. I have a desire, it has to be here. They didn't go looking for it. What they did was they sat with themselves. They sat with a part of themselves that was in fear and doubt and lack. And they just brought those things in order. And they had some intense couple of hours with themselves, not doing a bunch of stuff, but just experiencing what came up as they reconciled. I'm going forward and I'm committing in faith to do that. And when they did, within a couple of hours, the entire amount showed up like that. They didn't even ask for it. It just showed up. So this person made a decision. Then they got the results. Small changes, huge results. The last story I'll share, and again, I could maybe will write a whole book on this, but the last story I'll share, this is a long time ago, close to the beginning of my business. And I had someone who wanted to work with me, and they were really having a tough time financially. And they wanted to work together so badly, and they didn't believe that they could financially. So we did a little bit of coaching around that. And what this person did was they just were willing to acknowledge that they had some pent up anger, frustration, sadness about not allowing themselves to boldly move forward towards their dreams. And all this person did was allow that stuff to come out. They didn't go do some big process around it. We just did a little coaching around, like, that stuff has to come up and out. Do it consciously, do it responsibly, meaning don't go project it onto people or do some crazy stuff. Just allow yourself to feel it, write it out, yell it out. And this person let all this stuff come up. And again, it wasn't this massive process. It wasn't an esoteric process. It was simple. They just sat in a room and let it out, however they did. And within Ooh, I'm trying to remember the exact time frame, guys, but let's say within 2 weeks. I don't think it was any longer than that. $29,000 come into their business, which was exponentially more than they had ever experienced in a month. And it came in a couple weeks. And it was the direct result of them just letting this thing move. And the second they did that, all these opportunities started showing up again. It was almost instantaneous, the change that they made. So small changes, huge results. So this is about a change in consciousness. If you are familiar with anything I've done, any teachings I've done or my coaching or any work, all we're ever looking to do is change our state of consciousness. We cannot see in the world something that doesn't match our state of consciousness, our current level of beliefs and agreements with ourselves and the world around us. So that's why this work works. That's why when we make these small adjustments, these micro adjustments in consciousness, we start to see these miraculous, massive results because we're changing our level of awareness. Therefore, what we are able to observe and discern and then experience changes. We change, what we experience and receive changes. That's the calculus of the universe. So here are a few questions. Here are a few ways to start thinking about this that will change your consciousness quickly so you can start to see different results. Really spend time with this stuff. Really see what emerges from you because it will be the pathway forward. What thought or belief could I adjust right now to allow more in? Again, trust yourself. This isn't something you intellectually figure out. Ask the question and trust what comes up. Shut off the video, pause it if you need to. Really spend some time with this. Or write these questions down and journal about them later. What emotional need is being met by holding on to my limiting beliefs? Again, this is not coming from the intellect, this is coming from the heart. Let the truth emerge. If I could choose any new belief, what would it be? And whatever comes up, whatever you know is going to shift your experience, now choose that new belief and hold it in consciousness. Walk through your day, walk through your night, whenever you're watching this, with that new belief. Whatever it is, the belief might be, I'm worthy. The belief might be, this gets to be easy. Whatever it is, filter your experience through that new belief. Hold it as long as you can and see what starts to shift for you. At some level, all we're really talking about here is faith. Because what we're doing is we are, instead of going outside of ourselves and trying to manipulate reality to get a new experience, we're going inside ourselves. We're making that small change that can then produce that massive result with the least amount of energy, work, or toil possible. So what we're doing requires faith because we're going, okay, I'm going to make an adjustment and I'm going to hold that adjustment until I see a new result. That is faith. And as I was thinking about this and as I was preparing for this video, I thought of this line that I love from one of my favorite texts. The line reads, faith is an effort of the will. Faith is an effort of the will because fear is easier. They take the same amount of energy, they do, but fear is easier. And it takes personal will to choose faith, to choose a new belief. In any of the stories I told, what happened, right, was someone used their personal will to hold the new vision, to hold the idea of this belief until they get the result. So faith is an effort of the will in the following way. To hold faith requires you to hold the belief that something new is on its way, that making the changes you've made internally is enough, and to hold that until you see the shift externally, which does not always happen immediately. It can. Immediate miraculous results are possible. They are. And sometimes it takes time. It takes as much time as it takes. So faith is an effort of the will because you have to hold that belief. You have to hold that new awareness until the external reality shifts around you. And if you're willing to do that, there is nothing you cannot have. So remember, small changes, huge results. Work those questions I gave you. Change your consciousness and hold the new vision, hold the new belief, hold the new identity until you get the results you want and more.